Good afternoon. I'm John McGlennon, President of the Virginia Transit Association and a member of the James City County Board of Supervisors. I want to welcome all of you today to our 2020 awards event. This has been a year of many delays and restrictions on gatherings. Even though we were not able to host our event in person at the Jefferson Hotel last month, we were determined to find a way to come together. Thank you for being here today. Today's presentation is being recorded and will be available for on-demand viewing later. Hopefully, you've received a mailed envelope from VTA by now that contains the printed program from November 16th. It also highlights our event sponsors. I'd like to take a moment to recognize the sponsors today. They've really hung in with us through the pandemic restrictions, and we want to honor them. First, our title sponsor, Sonny Merryman, Virginia Bus Company. Our platinum sponsors, American Logistics, Angel Tracks, HNTB, Kimley Horn, and Route Match by Uber. Our gold sponsors are Allison Transmission, Indel Power Group, Ecolane, Engel, Gatekeeper Systems, Keolis, REI, Safe Fleet, and Tripmaster. And our silver sponsors, Alliance Autogas, Foursquare ITP, Proterra, United Safety, and Virginia Transit Liability Pool. They've made it possible for VTA to offer today's event, and we thank them very much. Give them our virtual applause.
John, we're still waiting for the silver sponsor slide to come up.
Ah, okay. Here we go.
Right.
I'll repeat those just for you to make sure that we recognize properly all of our sponsors. Alliance Autogas, Foursquare ITP, Proterra, United Safety, and Virginia Transit Liability Pool. We really do appreciate the fact that these sponsors have been so accommodating as we've had to make several changes in the date and place for this particular event. Now let me introduce a few of our distinguished guests. I'll ask them to wave as their names are read. First, we have our keynote luncheon speaker, Mr. Ron Brooks with American Logistics. Transit's always been played a key role in Ron's life, since he was physically unable to drive a car. We'll hear more about that in his remarks, Getting On and Going Far. I'd also like to introduce our other VTA officers who are in attendance. Vice President Justin Wilson, Mayor of Alexandria, is here. Secretary Josh Baker of DASH, and Treasurer William Harrell of HRT. I hope you've all met Lisa Guthrie, our Executive Director, and Danny Plauger, our VTA Deputy Director, and of course, Jamie Crawford, VTA's Program Coordinator, who've organized the conference. At this time, it's my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker, Mr. Ron Brooks. Ron's in Arizona, where he's telling us that it's a pretty cold day out there, only in the 60s. You certainly should have had the opportunity to read about Ron's background and his amazing transit connections in your printed program. We're delighted to have him with us today. Please join me in welcoming Ron Brooks.
I always thought that my entire career in public transit was a giant accident. I mean, when you think about it, who goes to bed, what little boy or little girl goes to bed at night and dreams, when I grow up, I'm going to be a bus driver. And yet, here I sit before you. Normally I'd stand, but since we're on Zoom, I have to sit. Here I sit before you, having spent 27 years in an industry that I never thought I would ever be in. And it's an industry that I've made my life and that I'll probably finish in. I would like to just say hello. I'm Ron Brooks, as John mentioned, coming to you from Phoenix. And I am so excited to be here and appreciative of Lisa and Danny and everybody with VTA for inviting me to come and speak with you and to share a conversation which I've titled Getting On and Going Far, which is really the story of my journey with public transit. And it's a journey that I think many of our passengers make because of the work that many of you do every single day. And I'll talk more about that in a minute, or in a little bit. So I work as the Vice President of Transit Market Development for a company called American Logistics, which Sean mentioned earlier. I'll share more about that in a little bit, but our mission at American Logistics is to reinvent paratransit, and I'll share about that. But again, to go back to my story, transit was not ever in my cards. For me, as a little boy growing up where I did in Indiana, which I'll share, job one was to be an astronaut. I remember being in kindergarten, sitting on my bed every afternoon before I left for school, reading a little book called You Will Go to the Moon. And I dreamed about that book. I dreamed about being an astronaut. The book was cool. It was written in the 60s, updated in the 70s, and it showed pictures of the astronauts blasting off in their Saturn V rocket. It showed the Apollo craft circling the Earth. It showed the lunar lander, the astronauts climbing out and jumping around in low lunar gravity, and the space buggy that they drove around in. It showed beautiful pictures of the Pacific as the astronauts splashed down safely. And it even showed renderings of what the authors thought a futuristic space station might look like. And that was a place that I wanted to be. Now, I was a practical kid. I understood that not very many people got to go to the moon. After all, if it was on TV, then it probably didn't happen very often. So I had a backup. My backup was to be a pilot, because pilots were cool. Planes fly really fast, they fly really high, and they go really far. So it's not quite the moon, but close enough. If I couldn't be an astronaut, then I'd be a pilot. So these are great dreams, but they were really a reach for someone like me. I was born in 1967 to working class parents in a working class town in northern Indiana. And when I say working class, I mean like working class. Neither of my parents went to college. In fact, nobody in my family had gone to college until I did, after, later in life. So growing up, that was not something that was in the cards. My mom was chronically ill for my entire childhood. So my sisters and I spent time living at home, and then about half of our time living with grandparents in another town. We moved often with my dad, who had one kind of low-wage job after another, usually gas stations or stores like Kmart and Kresge, which I don't even think is still around, and then gas stations. And we moved often. I remember times coming home, and my parents would have boxes, and we would start packing to move right then. We had our ideas, we weren't too sure, but that was our life. And I had an additional challenge. I was born with extremely poor eyesight. Now, as a little kid, I could see a little. I could watch TV if I sat really close to the screen. I could ride a bike, sort of. I could read books if they were in large print. And like everybody else in the state of Indiana, I played basketball. Now, the basketball that I grew up playing was a little bit different than the stuff you see on TV. Basically, the way we played basketball is everybody was a team of one, and your job on your team of one was to get the ball and score. And the job when you were on defense was to tackle the ball handler, get the ball, and score. And that's how we played, and that's how I grew up. By the time I was 13, my eyesight had gotten appreciably worse. I could still ride a bike, but it was pretty dangerous. I could still read, but I had to use equipment to read magnified text. And I could still watch TV, but I had to sit about 4 inches from the screen. My mom always thought it was Charlie's Angels that I was watching, but actually I truly couldn't see the screen very well, so I had to sit super close. And I still played basketball. In fact, basketball is the last thing that I did as a sighted person. I was playing one day with friends. I went for a rebound. I could barely see the backboard or the rim, so I'm not sure which thing the ball hit, but the ball bounced off and hit me. We went to the ground, wrestled, somebody got the ball, we played on. But 12 hours later, it turned out that basketball hit in my face was a hemorrhage to my one good eye. And 12 hours later, I did not have any eyesight left. I sat in a chair for 2 weeks, sleeping upright because the doctors thought that the hemorrhage might go away. Maybe gravity would help. It did not. So I began my new life as a freshman in high school, learning how to read Braille, learning how to navigate my school, and trying to figure out how to manage this new normal. That first year was tough. I went through a lot of challenges. My family moved for me, supposedly, to a bigger school with more programs, which meant I got to learn everything all over again. But I got through that first year. Things got better in school. I learned how to do things differently. And I graduated from high school in 1985, went on to college, graduated from Indiana University in 1990 with a liberal arts degree, and went out to San Francisco State so that I could study international relations, third world development theory, Latin American studies, so that I could change the world either as a college professor or as an employee of the US federal government. So how did transit get in there? Because none of that has much to do with public transit. So this is a relationship that I want to spend some time on, and this is the complicated relationship I had with public transit. And it was pretty complicated. The first time I ever rode a bus was in high school. It was my senior year. And the public school system in the town I grew up in hired someone called an orientation and mobility instructor who taught me whose job it was to teach me to travel. So he would come out and meet with me twice a week and take me out and teach me how to navigate my neighborhood. And one of the things he taught me was how to use the public bus system. So my very first bus ride, I get on the bus, and this is 1985, so it's before the ADA, it's before automated bus announcements, it's before GPS and phones and all that cool technology, it's before drivers were required to call stops. So I get on the bus, I tell the driver where I want to get off, which is the Kmart on the south side of our town, and I sit down and I take my seat and I wait until the driver's going to tell me where to get off. Now this is back in the day. My trainer was an old school trainer from Texas who believed that part of what I as a blind person needed to learn was problem solving. And so his approach was to let me get into situations, then help me figure out how to get out of them, but not to rescue. So when the driver told me it was my turn to get off, I got off the bus to the side of a road, and my trainer got off and said nothing, and the bus took off. It was a half mile from the nearest sidewalk and a little bit further than that to the Kmart. So that was my first experience with transit. Obviously, things got better. I learned how to use the bus system. I took buses all the way through college in Indiana and got to graduation, got to San Francisco State, and then I was introduced to trains. And this is about 1990, 91. So the ADA had passed, but a lot of things hadn't changed yet. So paratransit, where I lived, did not exist. So public transit was what I used. I used buses and BART trains and San Francisco Muni trains. And some of those stations had platform edges, some did not. BART had them, Muni didn't, because they were just becoming a requirement at this point. And I fell off 2 of them during my time in college. One time between 2 cars of a train that was in operation. That was a scary moment. So my relationship with public transit was off to a rocky start. In fact, I hated public transit. I just couldn't believe that this was my future. So I had an opportunity in 1991 because of an organization in the blind community in the Bay Area to attend an advisory committee that BART sponsored for people with disabilities to come and provide input to the agency on its programs and services. And I thought that this would be just about the coolest thing that I could possibly do, because this would be a structured forum where I would have the right to sit and talk to staff and tell them what I really thought of them. I thought this would be perfect. And I had this picture in my head of sitting in a room and telling transit all of the horrible things that they did, and they would have to then listen and explain themselves. So I jumped at this chance. This was going to be fantastic. What I found was totally different. People with disabilities were in the room from all different types of disabilities, who had all different types of needs and all different types of concerns. And there was staff from the agency, from BART, also in the room, and people talked. They talked about what was challenging about our system to use, and the staff listened. They took careful notes. They brought in engineers and planners and people that could explain either why things couldn't be changed or how they could be changed and how they could be improved. And I found it to be fascinating to learn all the things that I never understood about how public transit actually worked, and about how hard the people in the industry worked to make it work better. Now, I'm one of those people who always looks for the middle, the common ground. I think that's probably coming from the middle of the country. We always sort of look for the middle. So I tended to hear what the community wanted. I tended to hear what the staff said. And I was one of those people who could say, well, you know, here's the middle ground. What about this? And the staff at BART really liked it. And so in 1993, when a planning position came open, I was still in graduate school and things were kind of stalled. I was out of money and I was bored, and I didn't really have a heart for all that international relations stuff. So BART gave me an opportunity to hire on as an entry-level planner working on making key stations and new construction more accessible for people with disabilities like me. I took the job because it paid money, which was cool. And I loved it. As it so happened, I loved what I did. I loved sitting with engineers and looking at three-dimensional drawings of stations that hadn't been built yet and talking about, how do we make this thing work for people like me that have to use it? How do we make it work for folks in wheelchairs who have to navigate all of the level changes? And how do we make it work so that people with disabilities can find their way out to all the bus stops that we were building so that people could connect to the community that BART was trying to serve? About a year and a half after I started, BART, which was still working on implementing paratransit, offered a position to take on paratransit. And it paid better than the one I had, so I applied for the promotion. I was given the opportunity, and I got involved in managing BART's entry into the paratransit space. And it's really cool for me because we launched paratransit in 1995, and that system is still largely the same today as it was 25 years ago when we started. Now, I'm not saying that things shouldn't change, but really, when they don't change your stuff for 25 years, it either means that they are not very creative or else we did a good job, and I'd like to think the latter. But it was great to work in the industry and to see these things come to fruition. From there, my career progressed. I had an opportunity to go to Florida, which I think I probably went because the weather was really nice in Palm Beach County. But I got to go to Palm Beach County and manage accessible transit services and paratransit for the agency in Palm Beach County. I then went to the private sector to a company that several acquisitions and name changes later joined the TransDev organization. And I spent about 13 years in the private sector managing a paratransit brokerage in Albuquerque, doing some project support work in California, some corporate support work in Illinois, and then I came down to the Phoenix area in 2006 to work down here doing business development for paratransit and some other work. So transit for me was a job. I mean, it was my entire career, and it took me, to places I never thought I'd ever go. But it was really a lot more than that. As I shared earlier, transit was the only thing I had for mobility. Now, later, things like Uber and Lyft came along, and those gave me some opportunities, and particularly as a parent, which I'll get into, having those options was pretty handy. But honestly, transit was it. That was how I got around. And I did everything on public transit. I even moved on public transit. One time I moved a friend on public transit. That was interesting. We literally moved all of his contents from his crappy apartment in one part of San Francisco to a crappy apartment in another part of San Francisco. And we did it on BART. We did it on a Sunday morning. We literally stacked all of his stuff on a rolling chair and on a rolling suitcase. And he pulled the suitcase with stuff piled on top, and I had the chair with the potted plant and some boxes stacked on top of it. We shoveled it into an elevator at one station, shoveled it onto a train, shoveled it back onto another elevator, and got out at Montgomery Street Station in downtown San Francisco. I don't even know how we did it, and I'm not entirely sure how we didn't get arrested by the BART police, but we did it. So transit was super important. So this thing that started as something that I really didn't like became my entire life. I met my wife because of transit. And that's a true story. I met her 3 times before I had the nerve to ask her out. But one of those times I was at a BART event representing the agency, and she was in attendance as a member of the public. Our first date was in San Francisco. We took 2 Muni buses. We actually went to a restaurant, but we took 2 buses to get there. And that, we still laugh about it because I actually ran into a coworker on the transit system on our first date, which was really embarrassing. I carried my kids in backpacks on public transit. No car seats in this house, except for when we rode in someone else's car. It was backpacks and buses for us. And that was how we got around. To this day, my kids, who are now teenagers, now they have driver's licenses, so they like cars just like everybody else. But for most of their childhood, they rode buses. And by the time most parents were complaining about getting their kids back and forth to events, my kids had bus passes and were taking themselves to their events, at least some of them. So, and finally, I would say every move we made, the first thing we did was looked at transit. Every neighborhood that we moved to, we checked it. Every neighborhood we looked at, we figured out where were the 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 places we would have to get to, and how would we do it? What buses went there? How many were there? How likely were this is the planner in me, how likely were those bus routes to be canceled if there were budget cuts? So we always looked at really good, stable neighborhoods with lots of transit because that was where we could live. 7 years ago, I had the opportunity to move my career to Valley Metro, which is a transit agency serving the Phoenix metro area. And this was an opportunity of a lifetime because it gave me the chance to create services and to manage services for people with disabilities over a large metropolitan area. And I loved this opportunity because I literally got the chance to ask myself that same question that I'd been asking all the way back to my days at BART. If I were writing this service, what would I want? How would I want it to look? How would I want it to feel? And then I actually was at a level where I had the authority to make some of those things happen. A year ago, I joined my current employer, American Logistics. And I did that because I had so much fun at BART, but we did all the easy stuff. And American Logistics was doing something that as I've gotten older and gotten, as technology has evolved in our industry, that I've become a firm believer that we can make paratransit service more flexible, more empowering, and more on demand. And American Logistics is a company that's working in that space to basically create services that are on demand for folks with disabilities so they can live spontaneously just like people who ride buses and trains are able to do. And so I took the opportunity so that I could continue to create services that I, as a person with a disability, would like to use. So in short, my entire career, even though I really didn't know this until I was sitting here, it was actually during the pandemic. We were all in lockdown. I had nowhere to go except the backyard. And I remember sitting in the backyard, sharing my story that I just shared with you with a friend of mine, still under the belief that I was living a giant accident. And he pointed out the obvious. Everything you've done is about moving. You know, you wanted to move people to space and yourself. You wanted to fly a plane. You ended up working in an industry that's about moving people.
Looks like Ron is frozen up.
He has frozen.
We need to have Ron come back in again.
Ron, you're frozen.
Here it comes.
I've put in there if anybody has any questions for Ron to please type them in the chat box.
Lisa, while we are waiting for Ron, you want me to show the video?
No, let's wait a minute.
Just to mention, we have a total of 63 participants right now, which I think is a great level of interest.
David Harmer writes, Ron, your story's inspiring in many ways. So we'll make sure if he doesn't come back on, he hears that. So I think he was about ready to wrap it up. He might have had some software difficulties, which he was using to participate. So why don't we, do you see him, John? No. Okay. Let's go ahead and if we have time, we'll circle back with him at the end of the awards, okay?
Great, okay.
All right.
Well, first of all, we do want to express appreciation to Ron for his inspiring story. You know, when we think about transit, one of the things that is clear to me as somebody who's not directly involved in the industry is the degree to which everybody who's been working in transit, serving the public, looks for ways to address the needs of the various constituencies of transit agencies. And this is the needs of those who have physical disabilities or other challenges is one of the most important constituencies. And I think in many ways, we're recognizing the extra mile that so many of our transit agencies and individuals go through with what we're going to move to now. We're moving on to the awards portion of the program. And that's why I know many of you are here today to recognize the achievements of the industry. The awards today are in recognition for the 2019 and 2020 year and were supposed to have been awarded in May of 2020 at the conference in Roanoke, which then became the luncheon in Richmond, which was then canceled because of restrictions on the numbers of people who could be together in a gathering, and now brings us to today. The pandemic has wrecked its way with us, just as so many others. We were delayed in our recognition of our deserving individuals and agencies, so we're pleased to be able to make those awards today. Keep in mind, this is very important, that the awards decisions are made by a professional peer group, not VTA's staff or leaders. I want to thank the 2020 Awards Committee for their work. Our chair, Karen Finucane Clarkson of VRE, Barbara Creel of Williamsburg Area Transit Authority, that's mine, right? Karen Davis of Jaunt, Noel Dominguez of Fairfax County, Mike Norvell of Bay Transit, Maria Pedakowski of Suffolk Transit, and Natalie Wilkins of Greater Lynchburg Transit Company, with the assistance from VTA staff member Danny Plauger. I'm happy to introduce the Awards Committee Chair now, Karen Finucane Clarkson of VRE, who will announce the winners.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon, everybody. So glad to be here with you and to applaud and celebrate our well-deserving colleagues. For this year's awards, we're going to need to do things a little differently. When our November event had to be canceled, we shipped the winners' awards to them. We asked them to take a photograph of themselves with their awards so that we could insert those images in our slides. The Transit Professional Distinguished Service Award is named after Helen Poore, who was an outstanding transit manager of Charlottesville Transit from 1973 to 2003. She achieved national recognition as the first woman transit manager, and she was a founding member of VTA. This award is presented to transit professionals who, over the course of their career, have made outstanding contributions to public transportation in their locality and in Virginia. This year, we have one recipient to recognize: Debbie Swetnam. Debbie Swetnam is Blackburg Transit's longest serving employee. After answering an ad in the newspaper, Debbie joined BT on its first day in April 1983 as one of the original part-time bus drivers. 36 years and 92,775,422 passenger trips later, on January 31st, 2020, Debbie retired as the BT Planning and Regulatory Manager. So what happened in between? Well, within 4 months of being hired, Debbie was promoted to a full-time operations supervisor position. A little over a year later, as the system experienced rapid growth, Debbie was promoted to the newly created assistant manager position. As the system continued to expand, Debbie established many of the procedures still in use today. When BT transitioned from a rural to a small urban system, Debbie took on the critical responsibility of developing the many new policies and reporting protocols that were required. Soon after, she filled the regulatory manager position, and several years later, she added planning to her job title, helping to guide the project and service planning for Blacksburg, Christiansburg, and Virginia Tech. In her 36 years at BT, Debbie has consistently demonstrated the qualities of leadership, teamwork, dependability, professionalism, adaptability, and benevolence befitting the Helen Poore Distinguished Service Award. VTA is proud to recognize her for her professional contributions to public transportation advancement. And now I'm honored to introduce the Distinguished Public Official Leadership Award. It has a new name this year to honor our dear colleague and longtime transit advocate who passed away in August. Joe Alexander proudly served on the VTA board and executive committee for almost 40 years. He also served with distinction on the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors for 32 years and on the VRE, Metro, and NVTC boards. In fact, the Franconia Springfield Metro Station is even named for him. We applaud his leadership and are stronger for his involvement. Public transportation could not have asked for a better champion. For that reason, we are proudly renaming this award the Joseph Alexander Distinguished Public Official Leadership Award to recognize and honor his service every time we have a recipient. And we do have a very deserving recipient this year. The Virginia General Assembly passed memorial resolutions to honor Joe's service and accomplishments. Those are HR 606, sponsored by Delegate Mark Sickles, and SR 546, sponsored by Senator Adam Eben. We plan to deliver a framed copy of each resolution to his family. The 2020 General Assembly passed a sweeping transportation funding package known as the Omnibus Bill, HB 1414, sponsored by Speaker of the House Eileen Filler-Corn, and SB 890, sponsored by Senator Dick Saslaw. These measures are a major rewrite of transportation policy and funding, and they affect every Virginian. It is, in fact, the most significant reform in transit funding since Governor Belisle's administrations in 1986. The major steps forward for public transportation are substantial investment in the Commonwealth Mass Transit Fund, with all modes sharing in new sources of revenue. Creation of the Transit Incentive Program to assist in regional connections and greater equity and accessibility throughout Virginia. Establishment of the Commonwealth Rail Fund. Creation of the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority. None of these improvements would have been possible without the fearless and persistent leadership of Secretary of Transportation Shannon Valentine. It was her deep commitment to public transportation that was evident in the long days of the General Assembly session, where prolonged negotiations dragged on. Secretary Valentine covered every floor of the General Assembly building, visiting key legislators to promote the bill and its increased allocations for transit. Her tireless presentations before the Finance Appropriations Committees and subcommittees provided the substance that was needed in a political environment to arrive at a successful vote. While the revenues have been suppressed due to the coronavirus impacts, the tools remain in place when mobility resumes. VTA recognizes and applauds her efforts and will always remember her contributions to improve mobility for all across the Commonwealth. Thank you, Secretary Valentine. If Secretary Valentine is online right now, we know she did have a presentation to give. We'd love to hear remarks about the Omnibus Bill and what it took to get it enacted.
Hi, Karen. Thank you all so much. I've been texting with Secretary Valentine. She is actually, as we speak, testifying right now in front of the Senate Transportation and House Transportation Committees, again, representing transit and rail in the General Assembly. And she's very sorry that she can't make it. She was actually hoping that she'd be able to break away, but they are literally in the middle of their presentation as we speak. I know because I'm watching it on my other screen, and I know they're not able to get away right now. But I can't think of anybody that is more deserving of this award. She has been fearless, and she has fought very hard for increased funding for transit. The Omnibus Bill was a huge accomplishment. Also in 2018, when we created a dedicated funding stream for Metro, that was also not possible without the tireless work of Secretary Valentine. And she really does understand how important transit is to Virginia's economy, how important it is to our citizens, and how important accessibility is across the state as well. So I know she's very sorry that she can't be here today, but I know she would want me to thank you all for the award as well. So thanks.
Thank you, Director Mitchell.
Director Mitchell, if she is able to join us later, we'd certainly like to hear from her then. So if you could let her know that. Thank you.
I will definitely let her know.
All right.
So next we will recognize an entire agency. Public transportation has been hit hard by revenue losses while simultaneously needing to spend more on personal protective equipment and enhanced cleaning regimens. The challenges we've faced over the past few months have been enormous. However, there was one positive development in the midst of all that bad news. Back in the early days of March, the swift action of the Virginia Department of Rail and Public Transportation to provide an additional $11 million in operating assistance to transit providers throughout the Commonwealth. We believe that DRPT staff is deserving of special recognition for their foresight and quick action. DRPT's swift action to provide additional funding enabled Virginia's transit systems to make service changes without fear of an immediate budget crunch. The money enabled agencies that do not receive federal funds to offset unanticipated expenses and maintain cash flow. How swiftly did DRPT act? Well, consider this. The World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a pandemic on March 11th. The Office of Management and Budget asked agencies in the National Capital Region to offer telework to all eligible employees on March 15th. Just 2 days later, on March 17th, the Commonwealth Transportation Board authorized distribution of additional funding, and DRPT notified agencies that relief was on the way. This emergency funding was critical to sustaining services and preventing layoffs across Virginia. Now on to our Outstanding Community Program Award.
Wait just a minute.
There you go.
We are so fortunate to have several nominees for this award. For Outstanding Community Program Award, Large Transit System, we recognize DASH, Alexandria's transit company, for its 2019 Crisis Intervention Program. Several stations along the Alexandria portion of WMATA's yellow and blue lines desperately needed repairs and improvements. While WMATA's 2019 Platform Improvement Project provided a path to achieve those repairs, this ambitious investment in the region's transit infrastructure required closing 7 stations for approximately 14 weeks, posing a transportation crisis for hundreds of thousands of commuters who rely on those stations as critical connections. To meet the needs of these passengers and their community, DASH increased its fleet size by more than 60% and its overall staffing levels by more than 65%. With those elements in place, DASH was able to fully commit to operating the Blue Line shuttle as contracted by WMATA. Over the 108-day project, DASH provided 485,000 rides and served an average 5,280 weekday riders daily. Congratulations to DASH. Next is the Outstanding Community Program Award for a Small Transit System. We recognize Bay Transit for its Rappahannock Community College partnership. A lack of transportation impedes access to educational opportunities. Over 11% of RCC students said they had to miss class or could not enroll because of transportation limitations. So Bay Transit and the RCC Educational Foundation partnered to eliminate fares for all students who ride to and from RCC's 4 campuses on Bay Transit. RCC is enjoying increased enrollment. Since launching the program in mid-January, 2 months of ridership in 2020 increased 327% versus the same 2-month period in 2019. Congratulations to Bay Transit. A third award in this category is for Outstanding Community Outreach, and it goes to Hampton Roads Transit for its How to Ride program. HRT enhanced its travel training program by creating a series of tools, including videos, instructional books, rack cards, and activity books for children. The program tools help introduce various modes of transit to all populations, including customers with special needs who wish to ride independently. The program also allowed staff to train the trainers so they too can teach their clients how to ride public transit. Congratulations to HRT. For the Outstanding Public Transportation Marketing Award, we will recognize 3 category winners and an honorable mention. We were fortunate to have an abundance of submissions in this category this year. We start with the Greater Richmond Transit Company in the Transit System Marketing category for promoting its new Chesterfield County route. GRTC's campaign, Route 111, Route 1, Falling Creek, Tyler, was a multi-layered and multimedia marketing effort that supported the launch of the new route during winter-spring 2020. GRTC's Route 111 is a lifeline for people living and working along Route 1, connecting them to the essentials such as housing, jobs, education, and to the greater GRTC bus network. Congratulations, GRTC. The next marketing category is for a regional collaborative. It goes to the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority and the Northern Virginia Transportation Commission for their 2019 shutdown strategies. Metro delivered a highly successful public outreach campaign that achieved widespread awareness of the summer 2019 shutdown, part of its platform improvement project, which was a multi-year initiative to repair and reconstruct 20 outdoor station platforms. This historic and innovative project required closing 6 stations for several months, impacting tens of thousands of customers. An aggressive outreach and marketing campaign focused on establishing strategies to inform, educate, and update stakeholders through customer outreach, media channels, system-wide communications, employee communications, and community outreach, with the ultimate goal of mitigating inconvenience and retaining ridership. Knowledge of closures reached an all-time high of 98.4% before the stations closed in May 2019. Free shuttle buses provided roughly 26,000 trips a day, the most ever as part of a Metro shuttle bus operation. The month after the stations reopened, 90% of riders returned to the Metro rail system. Congratulations, WMATA. The Northern Virginia Transportation Commission partnered with local bus and rail systems for the first ever joint transit marketing campaign in Northern Virginia. The campaign, known as Nova Rides, launched following the summer-long shutdown of those 6 Metro rail stations and encouraged commuters to ride public transportation. The Nova Rides campaign overperformed in multiple metrics, while ridership on regional transit systems grew by 6% in the fourth quarter of 2019 compared to 2018, which aligned with the prime months of the Nova Rides campaign. Congratulations to NVTC. Our next marketing award is for a TDM entry. The Commonwealth's largest van pool program, Van Pool Alliance, paired up with the Richmond-based advertising agency, Sidel Communications, to create a fun, friendly, and nostalgic campaign promoting van pooling and its many benefits to commuters in Northern Virginia and DC. The campaign, titled Good Things Happen in a Van, was inspired by the culture of the 1960s when the van was king. The campaign included radio traffic sponsorships, paid search engines, online banner ads, online video, Facebook ads, and a refreshed website, as well as collateral that included a brochure, rack card, and infographic. The 6-month media buy led to 9.4 million impressions, over 19,000 clicks to the website, increased website traffic, users, and page views, a staggering increase in reach on Facebook, and an increase in organic phone calls to the Van Pool Alliance. Congratulations, OmniRide and Van Pool Alliance. The final recipient in the marketing category is an honorable mention. Suffolk Transit developed a successful social media marketing campaign to inform teenagers of low-cost public transportation options. To reach their teenage audience, they partnered with high school drama students. They wanted to show how people could use Suffolk Transit to reach an enjoyable destination, such as a movie theater or recreation center. Each PSA demonstrated convenience, affordability, and highlighted the web application to track the bus live. The campaign, titled Experience Suffolk, We Can Take You There, cost $0 to produce, and the 5 PSAs received over 4,300 views on Facebook. Suffolk Transit plans to deliver the message to more people later by re-releasing the PSAs and spending up to $500 on targeted social media advertising. Congratulations to Suffolk Transit. The Employee Unsung Hero Award was a new category in 2017 and one that greatly inspires us all. This year, we have one award for a transit system and one for a TDM agency. We are proud to honor Tristan Cunningham of Dash for this award. Tristan's expertise and dedication helped the agency realize several ambitious initiatives in 2019, including that operation of the Blue Line shuttle during WMATA's 2019 Platform Improvement Project, and major service improvements on its AT1 Plus and AT9 service. He met the challenges of these projects with professionalism, creativity, and customer focus, in addition to his regular work of leading service planning, scheduling, and run-cutting efforts for the system that carries nearly 4 million passengers annually, has 115 full-time operators, and 99 buses. Tristan has been with Dash for more than 16 years and has served in a variety of positions since he first joined the transit system as a service planning intern while in high school. Congratulations, Tristan. Next, the TDM Unsung Hero Award goes to Charika Ruffin, Program Manager at Ride Finders, the TDM division of GRTC Transit. For more than 16 years, Charika has been a dedicated and contributing member to the organization by advancing organizational goals, developing organizational strategies, and communicating to internal and external staff, stakeholders, customers, and commuters. Charika's energy and resilience is contagious, and she successfully delivers excellent in any engagement, marketing function, staff interaction, meeting and strategic planning session. She's an invaluable resource to staff members and to ride finders. She continuously hones her skills through workshops, webinars, conferences, and educational opportunities. Her passion for helping people extends beyond the work environment, as she is heavily involved in feeding the homeless through another agency. She is integral in keeping ride finders a robust and viable part of the transportation system. Congratulations, Charika. We don't always have a nomination for outstanding business, but I'm pleased to announce one this year. Transurban is a strong private partner to public transportation across the Commonwealth. By supporting NVTC's Commuter Choice program with an annual contribution from I-395 toll revenue, Transurban is working to ensure that Northern Virginia's public transportation infrastructure remains well-funded for a lifetime. In addition to this annual contribution, Transurban has provided $1 million in grants to over 260 local organizations, with many of the organizations supporting local transit and community transportation programs. As part of the recently opened I-395 express lanes, Transurban was able to deliver a package of transit infrastructure improvements to the Commonwealth that will help divert over 2.4 million trips off the roads. Transurban has also partnered with various organizations at the local, state, and national levels to advocate for public transportation solutions that will increase ridership and transit throughput. With their strong support for public transportation, Transurban is committed to keeping the Commonwealth moving forward. Congratulations, Transurban. For the final recognition, we are proud to announce the winner of the Exceptional Safety Award. Safety permeates every aspect of the Virginia Railway Express. It guides all actions and decisions by staff, train crews, maintenance workers, and the operations board. It is foremost in the railway's mission statement. For if VRE service isn't safe, being cost-effective, accessible, reliable, convenient, and comfortable doesn't matter. It's more than a philosophy. It's a culture. To maintain its position as the safest mode of travel in the Commonwealth, VRE looks for opportunities for proactive, continuous improvement. From positive train control implementation, to first responder training, to safety messaging, VRE uses all of the tools at its disposal to ensure the safety of passengers, train crews, maintenance workers, and staff, whether they are on trains or platforms, in parking lots, warehouses, or maintenance facilities, or at headquarters. Congratulations, VRE. I am honored to be the representative to present these awards, but behind me were many transit professionals, all of whom are applauding these award winners as being outstanding in their field and worthy of recognition and appreciation. Thank you for participating in this year's awards program, and we hope to hear from many more of you next year. Now I turn the program back over to President John McLennan.
Karen, thank you so much for the hard work of your committee in putting together such outstanding awards, and especially for your excellent presentation of the awards this afternoon. Appreciate all the good work that's gone into this. As we look ahead to our 2021 campaign to get back on the bus, we want to show you our Virginia Faces of Transit video. This project is designed to be shown anywhere and everywhere that can promote transit and why it matters. This launches our ridership promotion campaign, Get Back on the Bus. We hope you'll share with your boards on your social media platforms and on your websites this link. The links can be found on VTA's homepage, virginiatransit.com, vatransit.com. And we'll show the video, and then we'll have some important announcements to be made at the conclusion.
What do you think of when you think about public transit? Maybe you think about how buses and trains provide mobility. Transit takes you to work, to school, or to the doctor. Transit means you don't have to drive a car. It reduces traffic congestion. It also reduces the polluting emissions that come from cars. It makes housing more affordable if you don't have to pay for a car or its costs. Transit not only moves Virginians, it moves our state economy too. For every dollar invested in public transit, almost $3 is generated in economic impacts. But you can hear more from our Virginia Faces of Transit.
I'm a bus driver because I love helping people. I love helping them get to whatever destination they need to get to, and in a timely fashion. Not too long ago, I was actually taking public transportation. I didn't have a car of my own, so I actually know what the struggle is like, not to have a car, but being able to go to the bus stop at a certain time and see that bus coming and know that you're still going to get to where you need to go. I wanted to drive for GRTC for so long, and they gave me an opportunity. I always had a love for driving buses, just maneuvering the vehicles in and out the city. Most of the regular customers are people who work every day. It's like a bond, also kind of like a relationship that you develop with your passengers who's always riding, to make sure that they're going to work and earn a living for their family. It makes me really happy. If maybe they missed the bus, they wouldn't have to wait more than 15 minutes for another one. Some of my favorite passengers are my passengers who are in wheelchairs. They have really great spirits, and I just love interacting with them. It's just a fulfilling feeling. Helping people means a lot to me. It actually makes me feel happy that I could help someone else. To know that I showed up for someone and picked them up at the time I was supposed to, and they were able to get to where they were trying to go and on time, it makes me feel great.
Public transit improves my quality of life on a lot of different levels. I use public transit to basically get me to work, back and forth to work, and other places like doctor's appointments, grocery store shopping, things like that. I use basically the city buses, GLTC buses. I rely on it for just about all my essentials to get around Lynchburg. So it definitely enables me greater independence. Public transit is very important to me because without public transit, it would cost me more to take a cab or Uber or Lyft to get around. Really, you can basically do all your errands in the same amount of time with public transportation, just as much as having a vehicle. by using a vehicle, you're actually paying more for the cost of gas than you would a public transportation. So, like for instance, if a bus pass is $50 a month, a monthly average for a car fill-up could be 3 to 4 times that amount. Basically, what the Bus Tracker app is designed for is basically to give our riders a chance to see where their routes are and what the system looks like overall as far as when their bus is coming. I would say give public transportation a shot. You can't lose. Public transit will get you where you need to go within a day's time. I would encourage our riders to continue to support public transportation and get out there and ride the bus.
I'm a disabled Vietnam veteran. I would be unable to live at home and become an active member of the community. I'm able to go to the wellness center twice a week. I can go to Walmart. I can go to my doctor. They pick me up at my back door, deliver to me wherever I go, and then return me home on schedule, and it costs me just $2.40. I do not have to worry about my legal blindness keep me from community activities. I can't ever remember having a major problem. I don't have to worry. Bay Transit has been a blessing to me, so I can remain doing things I love to do.
It would be hard without public transportation here in Charlottesville. It's needed for the people. Everybody doesn't have a car. I rely on it every single day because I don't like to drive anyway. In Charlottesville, without public transportation, it's a hard life for someone if you don't have a car or a vehicle. I had to go out of town because I had a meeting in the city in Washington, and I had to leave here early in the morning. From this particular time, I couldn't get a Lyft or Uber, right? So something said, hey, what about the bus? So I called CAT, called them up. And lo and behold, they saved me. That was a very important meeting. They saved me. They were right on time to get me to my destination, and they played a big part in it because without them, I would have missed out. You might meet somebody that you haven't seen in a while, and you might break up a great conversation. When I get on the bus, everybody knows me. It's like love, and I don't like to shy away from them, so that's why I catch mass transportation. That's why I do the Charlottesville bus service instead of driving. I want to be connected to my people. It's nothing more beautiful than getting on the bus and seeing somebody that you went to high school with and you haven't seen in years. That's love. There's a safety track record from what I know about Charlottesville Transit. There are cameras on the bus, so you're being videotaped, so it's a safe thing to do. Charlottesville public transportation is the way to go. It's a blessing to us all, and I'm thankful for it.
National Landing is a premier destination for employers like Amazon and others because of our location, our access to diverse talent, and our multitude of transportation options. Transportation choice is essential for attracting top talent, and so it's an ingredient that we're finding employers value deeply and hope that we double down on our investments in. Public transit was an essential element of Amazon's decision to locate in National Landing. Their agreement with the state was premised on a series of transportation improvements that could deliver next generation mobility for the National Landing area. So not only was it important to have a great transportation system today, but we need to be building the transportation system for tomorrow. Most students live car-free. Without public transportation, we're really inhibiting access to opportunity, access to education, and it could really erode our educational institutions. Having micro-mobility options like scooters, like biking, are really essential to getting that last mile in for people working and living in areas proximate to mass transit. So a really robust and complete transportation system offers great mass transit options as well as micro-mobility. And with next generation investments, we're on track to become the most connected downtown in the country. And that is our competitive advantage. If we're interested in sustaining the vibrant economy that this region has enjoyed and to be more resilient for the future, then we need to be investing in our public transportation. It's no time to turn our backs on public transportation. Now is the time to double down on these investments for a competitive, equitable, and sustainable future.
Everyone benefits from public transit. Even if you choose not to ride public transit personally, you still benefit from it by cars being taken off the road. We provide over 45 million fewer vehicle miles traveled because of the fact that our buses and other modes of transit get people to where they need to go. With recent funding that we look forward to receiving from the General Assembly, we intend to implement 15-minute service, which we believe will help get more people on public transit, and that will certainly help lessen the carbon footprint for the region. Our buses are clean diesel, and we're also about to pilot some electric buses on one of our busiest routes. So we believe that there will be further electrification of the fleet in coming years, which will certainly lessen the carbon impact on this region. So we believe public transit provides a significant benefit to the environment. Transit provides economic opportunity and ladders of opportunity for people throughout the region. Without public transit, many people could not get to their jobs. We're taking people to work, to medical appointments, to school, you name it.
For more information on Virginia Faces of Transit, visit facesoftransit.org.
Well, that's just a great video that tells some wonderful stories, and I think it's really imperative for us to get those stories out to as many people as possible. So if you can, put it on your Facebook page, put it on your local community access station, and you can find the links again at vatransit.com. Lisa, I know you have some announcements to make.
Yes, thank you, John. And let me just ask you all, when you go to our webpage, vatransit.com, and click on Faces of Transit, you can see that a number of organizations have joined the coalition to support transit. And that's going to be very important as we head into the General Assembly session and while Congress is making important decisions about funding transit. So we would encourage you to email Danny and let him know that, yes, please add my organization, my transit agency to the coalition, and we will build up more support from there. A couple other announcements, as you can see on our slide here, we have scheduled our 2021 conference for September 28th and 29th at the Tyson's Corner Marriott. It was originally scheduled in May, and fortunately, the hotel was willing to work with us to push it back to September. We hope that we'll be able to meet in person at that time, finally. So please mark your calendars. And we also want to wrap up with an important message. You heard me just a minute ago mention decisions before Congress. Today, we join with transit colleagues across the country to collectively fight to #SavePublicTransit. We're urging Congress to act before it recesses for the holiday season. Our industry is facing dire financial crisis, and emergency funding has never been more urgent. We're calling on Congress and the administration to provide at least $32 billion in emergency funding and to ensure that agencies can survive and help our communities and nation transport essential workers to their jobs and recover from the economic fallout of the pandemic. So what can you do? Plenty, as the slides shows. We have just a few critical days left for Congress to act, so that we ask you to please leave here today with the resolution to do what you can. We've made it as easy for you as possible. Message is already prepared. emails are already slated to go to your appropriate representative and to your senators. And so we ask you to also engage on social media. So anyway, we hope that you will join with us in being a part of this movement. So John, I will turn it back over to you at this point.
Great. Thank you very much, Lisa, for that important message. I understand that Ron is back with us again. Is that right?
Yeah. Hey.
Hi, Ron. I didn't want to give you a chance if you had any concluding remarks, and then if anybody had any questions, we'd be happy to field them for Ron here.
I actually have no idea when my system dropped off because I turned off the speech so that y'all wouldn't listen to it or have to hear it. And so I have no idea where I dropped off. But I think I just want to close with this, and then if y'all want, I'm happy to answer questions or just chat. The thing that I just want to say is first off, I loved hearing your awards, and I loved the video. The video is phenomenal, so I'm assuming that you will not mind an Arizonan swiping your video and you know, blasting that out around social media. What a great story, and I love the stories that you featured. And again, you know, this is my whole life too, and you know, all the benefits that those folks talked about are benefits that I've experienced directly and personally. So thank you so much for the work that y'all are doing and for allowing me to be an almost part of it. Thank you, Zoom, for that as well. So if y'all have any questions, I'm happy to answer those, but thank you again for allowing me to be here.
Thank you, Ron. I know your story's been inspiring, and we've heard that from several people in the chat. We also have a question from Mike Norval. Ron, thanks for your excellent presentation. Do you anticipate services such as Uber and Lyft collaborating with the paratransit industry going forward?
Yes, that's a great question, and it's already happening. There are a number of transit agencies now that are working with transportation network companies. The company that I work for, we actually partner with them on a daily basis to do more than, well, pre-COVID, it was about 10,000 trips a day with Uber directly. So these services are already in some communities, and you know, part of our mission is to bring them to more because they bring down the cost and they bring up the spontaneous nature of the services that folks with disabilities need, just like everybody else. So yes, I do see that increasing.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions at this time.
Well, let me again thank you, Ron, for the very inspiring talk, and I think that folks are very aware of the importance of addressing the issues of people with physical challenges and the need to provide services to what is an essential constituency for transit among the many constituencies that we serve. Thanks again for being here. When you said that it was cold in Arizona, we didn't expect the freeze that we got, but you know, this is technology.
Yeah, thank you again.
I just want to, first of all, conclude by once again thanking our sponsors. And you know, this has been a really challenging year, and VTA, like so many organizations, require the accommodation and assistance of those that we work with. And those sponsors have really stepped up and done a fantastic job here. I just want to take a second to read through them again. The title sponsor, Sonny Merryman, Virginia Bus Company. The platinum sponsors, American Logistics, Angel Tracks, HNTB, Kimley Horn, and Route Match by Uber. Our gold sponsors were Allison Transmission, Indel Power Group, Ecolane, Angle, Gatekeeper Systems, or I'm sorry, NG, Gatekeeper Systems, Keolis, REI, Safe Fleet, and Tripmaster. And our silver sponsors, Alliance Autogas, Foursquare ITP, Proterra, United Safety, and Virginia Transit Liability Pool. We really do appreciate your involvement and support for VTA and look forward to expressing our thanks in person in 2021. Finally, let me just extend special thanks to our staff who put together today's event and worked so hard on the ones that didn't actually make it all the way through. It's been a tough and challenging year, and so Lisa and Danny And Jamie, thanks so much for all the work that you put in getting this event together. Thanks to all of you for coming. I hope you have a happy holiday. If you are traveling home today, do so safely. Some of you may already be there, and we wish you well. Thanks very much for being here today.
Thanks, everybody.